Welcome to Comedy Centric, your place for all things comedy. Every week, we'll discuss the legends and the people who built the business, the performers, writers, behind the scenes, and stories that you have never heard. So relax, take a load off, and join us for this episode of Comedy Centric. Now, the host of your show, nationally headlining comedian, a woman with a wicked sense of humor and a killer Jersey accent, Julia Scotti.
Hey, that's the voice I wish I would have had. Hi, I'm Julia Scotti, and right next to me here is I almost didn't recognize her, Kathy Caldwell.
I wish you had that voice too.
You are you're sporting a new hat tonight.
Got a new hat. You like it? It has a little microphone on it, but
I can't see that. Is there a microphone on it? Oh yeah, look at that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I lost my other hat. It was I was out on a boat with some friends this weekend. And we were clipping along at a nice little casual pace. And then my friend put the boat into higher gear.
Overdrive. Okay.
Yeah, and then away went the hat. And we're going to circle around to go back. But then I looked back and another boat had run it over.
Oh, poor hat. Yeah. That was the one that said, that was your trademark. It said,
I'm off duty.
I'm off duty.
Now I'm back on duty. I said duty.
You said duty.
But I got a microphone, so I'm back on duty. So.
No, duty. That's a cooler hat, I think. I like that hat better. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You were upstate this weekend?
No, I was in New England. I was in Connecticut.
Well, that's upstate.
Well, no. Upstate is New York. Upstate, when you go upstate, you go to New York. Upstate New York.
Why isn't Connecticut upstate?
Because it's not. It's upstate. You're either in North Jersey, upstate New York, or Connecticut. Nobody says I'm upstate in Connecticut. What's the matter with you?
You mean woman.
I'm not really. I'm just tired.
Did people laugh at you? Because if you had this attitude, I can't imagine that they did.
No, I was at the Connecticut Voice magazine, which is a magazine that supports LGBT folks, Q folks in Connecticut, and they were honoring businesses and personages who have helped, have been allies, or who are in the family and are doing wonderful things. It was very inspiring.
Were you a personages?
No, I was just a lowly comedian. I was just trying to make them laugh. But you know who was there? There was a senator. There was Senator Richard Blumenthal was there.
Oh yeah,
and also
Dickie B.
What?
Dickie B.
Dickie. Yes, that's what we all called him. But my favorite politician that was there was Congresswoman DeLauro. She's just my hero, and she knew me. I was really surprised. That's not why she's my hero. Rosa DeLauro is her name, but she knew me. She came over and gave me a big hug. Yeah, look at me, yay!
Did you sign like her bra or something?
No, I would never sign. I signed Richard Blumenthal's underwear though.
Did you? Dickie B.
Enough with Dickie B already. So that's where but it was really very uplifting and inspirational. And it was nice to be amongst so many LGBT folks. Because I said today, even on Facebook, my audience says, God bless them, but they tend to be about 98% cisgender straight people. And I love them. I mean, I'm glad they come out, but you do get lonely to be when you're not with people who are like you, and it's
sure.
It just felt that way. So, but I had a good time.
Oh, good.
And speaking of good times,
right.
That's why they call me Signora Segway.
I thought it was for a different reason, but okay.
No. Signora Segway in Italy, that's what I'm known as. Many people don't know that.
All right, then. Here we go.
But, well, we have a great guest today. She and I have never met up until about 5 minutes ago, but we've spoken a number of times, and we have a lot in common. So she's one of those people that cosmically I'm connected to. You never have to meet them, but you love them right away.
Yep.
So she is a producer for many shows on Sirius Radio, and let's bring her in. She can tell you how wonderful she is. Ladies and gentlemen, Christina Palumbo.
Go on.
And she's beautiful.
Oh,
She's
thank
She's
you.
beautiful, right? Yeah.
Looks athletic.
Guys, I am not worthy of this podcast.
No.
I don't know what you have me doing on here, but let's have fun.
Let's have fun. Did you see behind me? I don't know if you could see it. Do you see who's right over my shoulder?
Is that Kevin?
It is Kevin. Yeah.
See, I got one over my shoulder too. There he is.
Where, I can't see it. Is that Jay? Is it Jay?
There's a painting of Jay, and then there's Kevin over there, and then there's Jay again. Yep.
Okay.
Well,
so
we have to. Yeah, we
explain.
should give the backstory here.
We should.
So, Kevin Meaney, as anybody who knows me knows, I was just in love with and worked with him, and we were touring in a little thing called Big Pants and Hot Flashes when, unfortunately, it was his time to leave us. But he was also. You wanted to say how you know him?
Well, he was also a co-host in the Ha chair of the Jay Thomas Show on SiriusXM. And that was my first introduction to Kevin, other than my mom going, "Oh my God, you're working with Kevin Meaney. I love Kevin Meaney. I saw him in the Concord up in upstate." So that was my experience with him, is that we became co-hosts of a 3-hour comedy talk show.
Which is how I discovered Christina, because I was a huge fan of Jay Thomas, and of course Kevin too.
Mm-hmm.
But I would listen every afternoon and occasionally secretly call in. And after Kathy, by the way, is the one that got me on AGT.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's because of her that I even have a career.
Slap her around a little bit. Get your ass on that.
Yeah.
So right after I did it, who called me?
Me.
Yes,
Hello.
it was like the universe was just, holy shit, everything's happening exactly the way I planned it. And so you want to tell the story?
Well, sadly, Julia never made it onto the show because my precious Jay Thomas passed away from cancer in August of 2017. And while she wasn't the last person to be on our show, she was the last guest that I ever booked for our show. And she was supposed to come on that week. And sadly, I had to cancel her.
And I was heartbroken. I mean, I just, because you kind of didn't really want to tell me what was going on. And it wasn't until he actually passed that you told me, oh, gee, and I went, oh, man.
The greatest secret I have ever kept in my entire life.
That's 5 years ago already.
Yeah. It's pretty
Is
crazy.
it really? Yeah, well, Kev's going to be six years this year that he's gone.
Yeah.
So I listened to your tribute show to Jay when he passed. I hope somebody saved that somewhere.
Me too.
Well, you don't have a copy of it?
I probably do have a copy somewhere. The archives are a little iffy over there, so we're working on it.
Well, you culled together like the greatest moments from the shows, which were plentiful. I mean, there were times when I got mad at Jay a lot for what he was doing to Kevin, and I wasn't sure Kevin. Jay used to. I don't know, what would you say, badger him, Christina?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was like a friendly bully banter sort of thing. I think that Jay didn't really catch up with the times as quickly as Kevin did. And so, Jay was more of like the Flintstones and Kevin was more of the Jetsons.
Did you recognize that as it was happening, Christina? Or
I mean, I recognized it from the second I met Jay because he was like the guy from Mork and Mindy. You know what I mean? Like, he was kind of always set in his ways. And a part of me really loved that about him because it made him the broadcaster that he was. He was fearless when it came to broadcasting while also being so fearful. I mean, people didn't even realize that he would be like, oh, crap, but he really just went full steam ahead with it. And so there were times where I would be like white knuckling the console, like, please shut up. But then at the same time, the producer in me is like, this is going to get, people talking, and this is going to get, you to realize something or whatever the case may be. So there were 1,000 times where, something would happen where I would be like, oh, inappropriate, but I'd have to remember he's from a completely different time and he's trying to keep this, shock jock era going.
Well, you bring back shock jock, that term, because I can remember I guess it was in the 70s that he was on K-Rock. Was he on K-Rock in New York?
Yeah.
And was usurped by Howard Stern, wasn't he? When Howard came over.
Yeah.
And did you know that, Kath?
You know what? It's one of those things where you kind of have a vague memory of it, but you're not it's not one of those things you could definitely go, yeah, that's what happened. But it seems,
Well, I was a radio
familiar.
junkie. Yeah, I mean, I love, like I say, when I say I love Jay on radio, that's how far back I go with listening to him on K-Rock. And I was really pissed when Howard Stern came along. I didn't know anything about Howard Stern. What the hell did I know? But
now, how did you hook up with Jay, Christina?
Well, I worked at SiriusXM. So long story short, I never intended on getting into radio at all, but I always had, some sort of a draw to it. And I worked as an event planner. I went to college for hotel, restaurant, and tourism management, and I was miserable. I was working as an event planner, and I was planning all different types of things. And I was turning all of our meetings into my own radio show, basically. And I'm talking about Britney Spears flashing her vagina. And, this was back in obviously 2007. And or now, I don't know, who cares? It's like fashion. It turns.
Well, I didn't tell you, but at the end of each show, we all flash our vagina. So
perfect. Oh, I'm in the right spot.
If you want to be in the club,
So I used to turn, every meeting into a show, and I got pulled aside, and they're like, you really can't be doing this anymore, because I'm in a corporate setting, and I had a friend of a friend who said, give me your resume. I know somebody at Sirius Radio, and who knows, it doesn't hurt to try. And then lo and behold, they called me, and I showed up, and they were like, hey, yeah, if you're interested, we'd love to get you on board and train you. I had never been in a radio station before in my life. It was like the Devil Wears Prada in real life. I was just like, holy, I don't know.
You can say it.
Holy shit. I cannot believe I'm doing this. So I left everything. I left my job. I left my husband. I left my townhouse, and I packed up my little Maltese, and I moved into my grandmother's house in Brooklyn. Her and her 85-year-old boyfriend named Ted, who couldn't stand me because, I just messed up his whole life. And then I interned at Sirius as a 28-year-old college graduate. Thank God I have supportive parents and a grandmother that really, believed in me. And I interned there for about 6 or 7 months, and I showed up every day for free. I worked as many hours as they would let me stay in the building. I learned every single thing about running the board and, what it takes to be a producer and call screening. And there's a certain, magic that goes to all of it, and introducing myself to everybody possible in the building. And before I knew it, and then they hired me part-time, and I said, this is amazing. And here I am, like a 29-year-old, part-time work in New York City. I was the skinniest I've ever been. Let me tell you. I could not, all I was eating was like pretzel rods from the kitchen at SiriusXM. And then eventually became full-time. But in that time period, there was a lot of opportunity there to fill in for shows. And the producer of the Jay Thomas show was going to a Fish concert. And he said, Christina, I really need you to run this board for me. And I was like, yes, I'm in. And Jay and I hit it off immediately. He made me cry 1,000 times, 100%. I will. He was the hardest on me of anybody that I've ever worked with in my life, but it was always for the good of the radio. He always had his best intentions, even if I didn't see it at the time. And my very first time on air, I sounded like I came from Brooklyn. I was just this girl from hey, and he was like, whoa, stop the whole show. He was like, hold on a second. You sound like a fucking idiot. What are you saying? And I was like, I almost died. I was like, and I held back tears and grew the thickest skin possible. And 9 years later, I think we were together on the show. 7 years later, I think.
Wow.
We were like cookies and cream. I don't know.
You were. Yeah. You really, really. Kathy's in radio now. She was. Can we say where you work, Kath?
You can, sure.
Well, you can say it. I don't have to.
I work for Corporation Odyssey, which has multiple stations, but specifically a KYW news radio in Philadelphia. But yeah, I totally get that whole thing where you come in with the passion. Is like, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. Throw anything you have at me. And when you find people like yourself that are willing to take all that on and go, yep, I can do it. Yep, I got it. Yep. And you want to grow and learn. And that's why you've been so successful up until this point. You just keep figuring out the next path. So you're with another podcast now. So,
well, I've gone through pretty much every talk show on that platform, and I'm still working with SiriusXM. And now I work from home after COVID. I live in Pennsylvania. SiriusXM is in New York. And when I first started working there, I was living in Brooklyn and able to commute every day. And over the course of the 13 years that I've been working there, I found a husband, like a second husband. I couldn't believe it. I got one the first time. I can't even believe I got another one.
Where do you find them?
I don't know.
On the road?
Just picking them out. No, actually, I found them at college. So I had to move because, my husband has children, and we couldn't pick the children up and move them because they have a mother. So we have to, make it work. And so for the first 3 years of our marriage, I commuted into the city, Nazareth, Pennsylvania, for 5.5 hours a day on the bus. So 2.5 hours roughly, depending on traffic, schlepping it back and forth until COVID hit and we all got to be at home. And then they've realized that I'm really great at home. So they're letting me stay here and do, I can get 3 times the amount of things done here instead of sitting on a bus for 6 hours. So it made sense for me. So now I'm doing like special projects.
And just for proximity, Nazareth is just north of Easton.
Yes,
right near Allentown.
Which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Philly.
As the crow flies.
I'm right in between New York and Philadelphia. So if I wanted to work in any major city, I'm screwed.
Can I ask it's kind of a personal question, but
I'm an open book.
Oh, okay. Well, let's turn to page 22.
What's your mother's maiden name?
Ferrarisi. She was born in Italy.
What's her name?
Ferrarisi.
Her last name. What was it? What's her first name?
Anna.
Oh, Anna. Do you speak Italian?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, because I'm learning. I want to go. Yeah.
I was a stubborn child, and I had a grandmother that spoke only Italian, and I was afraid of her. So.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
Well, the question I had, and I thought about this after Jay died, and when you did the tribute show, when you went, you had to go somewhere within the Sirius family. What was it like? You had been with him how many years?
I think it was a total of 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, that's a long time, 5 days a week,
Yeah.
What was that? Must have felt like daunting to have to do something else within the station.
It was awful because I don't think anybody really knew how to deal with the grief, and especially me. I don't think anybody realized how close we really were. Like he was more than a mentor to me. We were on the phone with each other constantly. I mean, everything that happened to him, everything that happened to me was a text message. And I knew his family. He knew my family. So we were very close. And I knew he was sick the entire time and couldn't share it with anybody. And that was, eating me up inside as much as the cancer was eating him up inside. You know what I mean? And you can tell things on the air. He's starting to slip and here and there. And then he finally announced it. And we were all like a breath of fresh air. But then he went into remission and then it came back. And again, I had to keep this secret again. And so, it was just building and building and building. And only like my closest friends and like people that were super close to the show, like Steve, our other producers and stuff, they all knew, but the majority of the people did not know. So when he died, it was almost like a shock to a lot of people because they really didn't know that he had cancer. And he wanted to keep it a secret because he was still working and he didn't want to be, labeled as the guy with cancer. So he was still doing stuff with Ray Donovan. He was still doing voiceover work, even though like his voice was different then. He was still very much doing things and he was writing a book at the time. So it was a really hard secret to keep. When he died, it didn't seem like anybody knew how to handle it. And it didn't seem like there was a plan for me because we weren't working on a plan for me. So it was a lot of like, in the first couple of weeks, I had to just keep putting best of shows on the air. So he was in my head the entire time. I'm editing shows together and I'm weeping, crying. And I didn't take the time off that I needed to because I didn't know how to deal with it. And I felt like I don't want to leave, the listeners hanging. I want them to have this. Like it was so special and it wasn't a job. You know what I mean? It was so much more than a job. And I knew I knew how people felt about him and how serious they took the entertainment. And I know that radio is changing and I know that there's nothing else like him. So like, I wanted to keep it going. And so I did that for a while until his, I guess, contract ran out. And then they kind of just like placed me here, placed me there. And, I always felt like I wasn't being utilized to my ability because I have, special uniqueness about the way I go about the job. And I just kind of dangled for a little while. Excuse me. I worked with Nick DiPaolo for a bit before they fired him. I eventually got placed on Entertainment Weekly Radio, which was like a, daily pop culture kind of stuff. And, I like pop culture, but I'm not, I like the word cunt. So it really didn't fit,
Who doesn't?
I didn't really fit necessarily, but I have a way of making myself fit. So I kind of made myself a square peg and went right in and did whatever they told me. And then finally somebody needed a producer, and that somebody was Jim Norton, and he was doing the Chip Chipperson Podcast. And I didn't know much about it, but everybody was like, get Christina, she's a widow, you can use her. And then I wound up with him for a little while too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did the company provide any support for you, or?
I went into HR with it, and I sought out some help. They gave me a phone number of some grievance things that they can call. I don't think I was ready to deal with any of it. And I had never lost somebody that close or special to me before. Like I lost family members, but they were never like, I spent more time with him than the majority of my family. So it was, and even though we were on separate coasts, I mean, it was like we were constantly next to each other.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So I don't think that I was really ready to deal with it. And anything that they would have provided me, I'm not even sure that I would have like fully taken them up on it. It wasn't until, to be very honest with you, it wasn't until 2021 that I started seeing somebody about all of my things, because I didn't realize I'm not only just grieving Jay, I'm grieving the show. I mean, both things died. And one was just as special as the other in a sense of like, it was our baby. You know what I mean? Not to sound like gross or weird, but like we really created this place and this thing, and now it's gone. And who am I without you?
Well, yeah, you lost a friend and you lost an identity in terms of your work.
There were one of my favorite things about the show was the road things that you did with the
Holiday Road.
That was it. Holiday Road. I remember that's the first time I ever heard about what they did with the catfish where they shoved their hand down.
What is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Explain it.
So Holiday Road Jay was really interested in, so we had a lot of truck drivers listening and everybody was on the road. When satellite radio started, it was mostly truck drivers and people didn't really, get on board and Howard listeners. So he was really all about travel all the time, Jay. And he would tell me all the time, Christina, don't waste your time going anywhere else but Destin, Florida. It's the best beach you've ever been on. But he's been to Thailand. You know what I mean? So like, he was just like so interested in all of the most weird, mundane, crazy, didn't matter what it was. He was so interested in it. So he came up with this concept of all around the country, there are places to stop here and there, and let's tell our listeners about it because they are on the road. So we stole the Holiday Road song from
Got it.
Holiday Road,
Vacation, right? Vacation.
And we sang it like a bunch of idiots on the air, and then we would speak to some random person in like, I don't know, Minnesota. We had the one that sticks out to me right now for some reason is the umbrella cover museum. When you get an umbrella and it has a cover and you usually just throw it away, or people send those into this place and there's a museum and there's all types of, and I talked to this woman for like 30 minutes. I mean, like he would find the most interesting stuff out of absolutely nothing. And it was fascinating.
Yeah, the museums. There were a number of museums. I can't remember them offhand, but I used to.
Remember the Clown Motel? Oh, what a creep show that was.
Yeah, it's a shame that those shows can't be heard again because they were. There's got to be a place for them on the.
I think it's up to Jay's family. I think Jay had some specific things in his.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
In his agreements and stuff. So unless his family would be willing to, I don't really know. I don't know the specifics of it, but I know that he didn't want it to just kind of go out there and then have his family, not be a part of it in some sort of way. So
I was watching Mr. Holland's Opus not too long ago, and I just
hold my leg. Oh yeah. He says, hold my leg.
And just how good he was in that. He was such a likable human being. And you get the sense that if you knew him and because you did know him, I mean, you confirmed how I think I would have felt had I gotten to know him.
Yeah. At first I was like, I hate him. I really thought, I really did, because he was so brutal. But then it just kind of clicked one day. Like, you're doing this for my own good. Like, I can tell that this is for my own good. And he really helped shape me in a sense of I always had a good sense of humor, but now I have a better sense of humor. You know what I mean? And he would help me see the funny or the comedic timing that I needed to, get my point across and still sound funny and make light of certain things or give people enough rope to hang themselves. Don't hang them, let them hang themselves. And he had so many lessons. And I would watch him broadcast when he would come into the studio every once in a while, or, the 2 times that he flew me out there, which, by the way, first class, first time ever.
Wow.
He would, literally just ripping magazine articles and newspaper articles. He hated the computer. We have this whole thing. You can probably find it somewhere online where he's screaming at me, left click or right click, Christina, I don't know the password. And he's flipping out, and he's like, and I'm laughing, and he's like, you're a real asshole, Christina, you're a real asshole. And we're on the air, and he's got the IT guy on his cell phone, flipped it over in the microphone. That's how cut and paste we were. It was insane. And he's screaming at him, and he would just rip things out of thin air, turn it into a whole show. And just I would have prepped him for 3 hours. He didn't look at it. It was just him flying off the handle.
Did he have a stand-up comedy background?
Huh?
Did he have a stand-up background or improv?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
I remember one show where he lost power at his house. I guess he was in California.
Yep.
And he did the whole show on the phone. He called up on the phone, and it had to be the entire show, right?
Yeah, it was the whole show. And he was doing his errands. Do you remember he went to the dry cleaner? Yeah.
He's going, and I'm like, this is fucking gold. My God, this is great stuff. Awesome. Yeah. I am so glad that glad I wasn't sure we'd have enough to talk about, but
I'll talk to you about him for days.
I want to talk about you too, though, because all right. So, which brings me to, why aren't you on the air?
Good question.
Do you want to be?
Yes, I do. I'm filling in right now on a show on Stars, and it's called Just Jenny, and I'm producing for her, and she's very sweet, and she talks to me on the phone. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know if I just don't promote myself in such a way, or I don't know if it's me or if it's, I don't know. I have no idea. But I never wanted the Cristina Palumbo show. That was never my intention. I always felt really strong as a co-host, even when I would think that, like, when I was a kid, I used to play radio in my bedroom, right? And I had a dual tape recorder, and I used to play stuff and interview people, and I would kind of like, just make it all kind of work for me. But I didn't enjoy like being the star. I wanted to interview everybody. I never wanted to be the main focus. And then when it came to co-hosting with him, it was so natural, it all just came so natural. And then they would pluck me into these random shows. So I worked on the Alex Bennett program, which was a political show, and I know nothing about politics. And I worked on that show for 3 years. We had segments called Christina Does the News. I mean, I don't even know about them. You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea. He was giving me the citizenship test on the air, and I was failing. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And then, they put me into out Q for a little while, and I was working on a show called The Diana Cage Show, and it was a 10 to 1 a.m. show. You know Diana Cage by any chance?
I know of her. She had been on an earlier time slot, wasn't she, at one point?
One point, but I had joined her at 10 to 1 a.m. And that was just wild. And I was just like this, what is going on in this room? But I somehow fit in with everybody. So I have like this way of kind of just like oozing myself in.
You're Christina Chameleon.
But
Christina Chameleon. Well, so, let me. You know what I see in your future.
Well, listen to Auntie Julia. She'll tell you what you need to do. Christina.
Tell me.
Well, here's what if you want to be on the air and you're with a show as a co-host, you need to find yourself an aging comic, preferably a transgender one.
Come back. Sorry.
I can't believe I'm such a whore.
Right in front of her, Julia.
Right in front of her. I know. I'd throw her under the bus. No. I'm with all this.
Incoming. Jesus.
Yeah. No. It's a very strange thing. I don't know how to really even explain why it was it never happened that way. I don't think that SiriusXM ever looked at me as a talent necessarily. I was always just the producer. And so even though I kept getting pulled onto these random shows and all of these random things, and I was being requested for certain things, and it seems like people have like they relate to me in a way because I'm just very normal. I mean, I came onto the radio in such a unique way, divorcing at 28 years old, poor, living with my grandmother, and not, trying to be some Instagram model, or, you know what I mean? Like I was never like flashing my boobs or making it like, it was always like whatever I was saying or making sure that I would make these guys laugh. That was the most important thing to me. And I just kind of fit in with like one of the guys. And then when all my guys died, so did I guess. I don't know.
Did you ever think about terrestrial radio, like as opposed to Sirius?
I did. When I moved to Nazareth, Pennsylvania, I checked out all the local markets, and I went to college in Pennsylvania. So I was familiar with a lot of the radio stations around here. Sadly, there is no budget whatsoever for producers or anything. And, there's actually two hosts that are in this area that have both lost their co-hosts tragically. So I reached out to these people the psychopath that I am. And I'm like, hey, Radio Widow, I'm a radio widow too. Let's be radio widows together. And there's just no budget for a show. And it's just different now, apparently. They're not looking to, Sirius? A lot of these shows are syndicated.
Would you leave Sirius if that opportunity presented itself?
If it came up to it, I mean, now that I'm working from home, I don't think that I would. But when I was nervous about having to make that commute and wanting to, change my life and redirect it to something up here so that I wouldn't have to take so much time away from my family with this commute, I was considering it. But.
Let me ask you a question, because something you said earlier about as a child, you would play radio in your room. Okay. Which kind of contradicts, you said that you went to college for something totally unrelated to that.
You didn't know you were on the witness stand, did you?
No, it's fine. I should have never went to college. First of all, I was not a good student. I didn't realize then what I know now, that Votech stuff is more of my way of. I should have went to like the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Radio didn't seem attainable to me when I was, growing up. It sounded like I want to be an actress, and it just didn't. Some people grow up with, encouraging that sort of thing. In my family, it's like, sit down, stop. All right, just put on a show and then go in the room. You know what I mean?
You're Italian, so I know that. I'm Italian. I grew up with that. And who wants a comedian?
It's like children are made to be seen and not heard. Do your dance and then go inside.
Get a nice career, day job, work for the phone company.
Yeah. So I went to college. My dad was like, I don't care what you major in. It could be basket weaving. Just get an education. I'll pay for it if you graduate. If you don't graduate, you're on your own, kiddo. Okay. So I freak out, and I'm living at the time in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and I was doing work in the resorts. I was working as an not an event planner, as a recreational person. I would
What
play.
year was that? What year was that?
1995 till about 2003. I was there. I was at the
what resorts
and Shawnee resorts, and I was playing with all the kids. I was dressed up as a panda. I was doing face makeup.
Wait. Do you have it, Kath?
I have a turkey costume one. I don't have the panda one, but I do have a turkey costume.
Stand by, and I'll talk to you while
keep talking.
The reason I asked was because I used to work the Poconos all the time.
Oh, really?
And
do you go to like the Caesars resort, like the Champagne?
Oh yeah, I did all the Caesars resorts. I did Penn Hills.
Yep.
That crazy bastard.
I know all about it. That hasn't changed a lick.
I went by there. It's been closed forever, but it's spooky. It's
like a time. It's like a time warp. It's pretty crazy.
It's kind of sad in a way. I mean, it was a time warp when it was open, but it looks spooky now. Yeah. Yeah.
So I worked on I worked as a recreational, assistant or whatever. And I hosted all of the not so newlywed game. And I'm like, hey, what color panties did your wife have on this morning? You know what I mean? Like stupid stuff like that in the pub. And then, I would do karaoke and I'd be like, at the Fernwood, Quebec. You guys, we really are like soul kismet. This is
yeah.
That's unbelievable. I wore that going down a snow tubing hill and then it rolled off. Anyway.
Decapitated panda.
Yeah. But so I did all this stuff and that's why I figured, well, I'll just get a degree in that because I know it, and I'm doing it now and it makes sense. And that's why I went with it. But then
sometimes life leads you, it's the path that you're led to. And, you were smart if the teacher appeared and you went with it. Thank you for that, Kat. Really, thank you so much for doing it. We aim to please here.
You know what? I bought that panda 10 years ago in hopes of this.
Interviewing it.
Come true.
I'm looking at, and so now you got the two daughters, right? You got Addison.
Yeah. I have two.
No, you don't have daughters.
They didn't come out of my body. No, ma'am.
Oh, I thought one of them did. No?
Absolutely not. That was never going to happen.
Well, that's a loving thing to say. They didn't come out of my body.
Well, I mean, it's better that way because, it's better that way.
Well, especially if you're fleshing your vagina, a lot.
Exactly. No, they are going to be 15 and going to be 12. And I, went my whole life thinking I wasn't going to have kids. And here I am with two of them. Funny thing, I worked on the radio with a psychic named Mary Ochino, and she told me I was going to have two girls. And I was like, now I know she's, because I'm not having children. I know and here I am with two girls. So
that has to freak you out a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Little bit.
Did she tell you anything else?
Little things here and there, but nothing really that stood out other than the two girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
You reminded me, look at your daughter's name, Addison. It reminded me of Madison, who used to be on the show with you. Or you took her place? Is that how that?
No. So Madison was never a me. Madison was more of a ha-ha. She was more of a Kevin, actually.
Okay.
It was like a ha-ha.
That's right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So I would produce the show, call, screen, and be Jay's sidekick. Madison would come in on a certain day and, be in the ha-ha chair, and he would kind of go off of her, and same thing would happen with Shuli, same thing would happen with Kevin, and then Ira the weatherman would come in and be his own.
That guy, Kathy, if you can ever find a recording of Ira the weatherman.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
This guy.
That's all over the internet. You just got to Google that.
Oh my God.
What happened to Ira?
I'm still in touch with him.
Oh, good.
Are you? He's still alive?
Oh yeah, he's doing well. He was recently, beginning of the summer, he was in the hospital for a little bit because his numbers were a little off, but he's okay now, Christina. You're a lovely person for calling me. He still is addicted to penny slots. He tells me he has a girlfriend. He tells me this girl is in her 30s. I beg him not to give her any money. And then that's the end of our phone call. So, and then he'll tell me about all the radio stations he calls across the country to tell them about the weather and, play whatever various games they play with him.
Did he have a theme song that you guys played for him? Was there a theme song for him?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. It was the guy. He was just he had funny bones, and he didn't even realize, I don't think, how funny he was.
No, absolutely.
Those callers that would call in all the time for radio stations were gold, because they it was just a running character, and they were just who they were, and And
do you know the story of Ira?
I don't know Ira, but I know different people, like radio stations I worked with and worked for, and somebody would call up and go, "Hey, it's Joe from Cannonsburg. I hear John died," and then the next call is John. He goes, "I'm not dead yet." It's like that kind of.
Well, Ira is your your typical. He'll call. He's like a Rain Man. He knows every broadcaster, every station. He was a big Cousin Brucey fan, so he used to, marvel over him. But the way that Jay and Ira met each other was because back in the 80s, 90s or so, Ira used to call Jay's show all the time, and he would also call everybody else's show, and he would win things on the radio. And remember, you would go down to the station and pick up your prizes.
Sure.
Well, Jay was in some sort of an argument with his program director about, the average listener and who they should be catering to and blah, blah, blah. And he's walking through the lobby, and Ira is in the lobby waiting to collect his prize, and he goes, "Jay Thomas, you are number one." And Jay goes, "You want to know who my average listener is? That's my average listener." And he was with him ever since. And everybody just grew to love Ira. People thought that he was fake. People thought that we were putting on The Voice. He is.
Oh no! There's never a doubt that guy wasn't for real. He is
an old Jewish man from Co-op City.
Co-op City, right? That's right. Co-op City. And he had girlfriends.
I love those people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was a character. You're right. You're right. That kind of thing, I don't know if that'll ever come around again, that kind of show. It was
so
it was getting back to Madison. Are you still in touch with her?
I'm friendly with Madison. Yeah. I mean, now that I work from home, I really just talk to her on the internet and stuff. It's not, I don't see her in the hallways every day.
But she's still on the air, though?
She's still on the air.
She
works the music channels. She's on all alternative and lithium and things like that. Yeah, she's still thriving.
That's great.
And Shuli is no longer with Howard Stern, but he's doing his own thing. He lives in Alabama, and he is doing, comedy all over the place. He has his own podcast. He's doing great.
That was the thing that I thought was kind of nice, that Howard and Jay kind of absorbed into each other at some point. I don't know how that came about, but I thought it was good that it did.
I don't know how it came about either. It happened before my time, and then I was beyond thrilled to be a part of it because, being on Howard 101 in the mornings on Fridays was, I had a small, tiny dream of like running a board, and now I'm talking to who on what channel? It was absolutely crazy.
Now, you were talking about New York, and I don't want to bring up like a downer, but we're just coming off of 9/11 not too long ago. Were you in New York?
No, I was in college at the time. My dad was working in the city. I was at ESU, East Stroudsburg University, and I remember I was in the Union eating a bagel right before my French class, and I look up at the TVs and I was confused. I was like, what am I watching? And then it just kind of all hit me, and then I just started frantically trying to call my dad, who was on 8th Avenue, more Midtown. He wasn't even aware. I told him about it because he was, in his own building doing. He worked for an engineering company, and he was, in it. And I was one of the first people that was able to get through to him, and then all the phones just kind of went crazy, and nobody can get through to anybody. And then I got in touch with my mother because she was trying to get in touch with him. And it's actually my dad's 50th birthday when that happened, and he walked from Manhattan to Brooklyn that day. And I mean, like it was so. I mean, I'm so thankful that he was able to.
Did he work downtown?
He worked in Midtown.
Okay.
At the time, he worked on 8th Avenue, but it was like kind of like near 34th Street. I think it was like 32nd Street or something like that. He wasn't all the way downtown, but he did a lot of work down there because he, worked in engineering, and they did a lot of like the road construction. He would be the guy that would, make the proposals for the company to buy the job. So he was down there often, but I'm very lucky that not on that day.
Sure. And it's just it's funny how when you live on the East Coast, how different the experience is.
Yeah.
And how much more I think you remember. And to no fault of anybody, it's just, it was all kind of in this area, but like you remember to the minute what you're doing and
the
all
very
of that.
second. Yeah, absolutely.
And when you talk to people that live West Coast California, there's a little bit more of a like, kind of, I guess
it's just because
it was
disconnect necessarily, but I grew up in Brooklyn from the time I was born until high school. My parents, who moves a child 3 days before high school to the Poconos from Brooklyn? Put a bullet in I'm not joking.
Oh my God.
Awful. So I wasn't there, but I grew up there my entire life, and it was all very connected to me. And so, of course. And, my grandmother lived in Brooklyn her whole life, and all of my family is from there. So New York is like the home, the hub of everything for me.
It's your home.
Yeah.
Well, I've just had a great time.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh no, are you kidding? I feel like an old friend that, has come back into my life. So
I'm happy that this worked out like this, because I've gotten you on, almost one show, and then the other show with Jessica Shaw. You joined us for a show on entertainment on EW Live when you had your documentary come out, and now we're full circle. I'm on your show. This is amazing.
I know that Jim Norton was talking about having me on at one point.
Oh, get on it! Yeah.
I never heard from him again.
You want me to text him?
I'd love to go on. Is he still on?
This whole thing has been a 45-minute ruse just to get through on Jim Norton. This we do this with everybody.
I made the connection. I didn't know that you were.
I'll shoot him a text. Definitely.
Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll do the show, sure. But I just want him to be nice to me, though.
Oh, I'm sure.
He used to open for me. He used to open for me.
Come on, really?
I'm telling you, I'm not lying.
That's great. You guys should definitely get on the air and kick it.
It was 100 years ago. I think it was at it's a club in New Brunswick.
Stress Factory.
Stress Factory. I think that's where I met him, actually.
Really?
I was on. Yeah, when I was out. That was a million years ago. Anyway,
will you come back?
I will come back whenever. Yes, please.
Awesome.
This was great. I love hanging out with you guys for sure. And I got a million stories. I'll tell you all of them. And I'll tell you about the time that Kevin, took his colonoscopy medication right in front of us, and then almost shit his pants.
I remember that. I do remember that show. Yeah. We'll talk about next show. We'll talk about Kevin and our time with him, our shortened time with him.
For sure.
Christina, honest to God, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thanks for wanting to talk to me. I feel honored. I really do.
One of the things I love about this podcast is that I can ask people questions I've always wanted to ask. Like we had Bill Persky. I don't know if you know who he is, but
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Dick Van Dyke Show. He wrote a bunch of episodes and stuff, and I got to ask him all kinds of questions. So for me, it was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
So this was kind of cool, and I appreciate it.
Julia was like a little kid. She's like, so another thing, where do waves come from? And
I said, come on, Bill, put the panda hat on. Come on.
Christina, be well. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
All of our best. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care. So this was our fifth show. Did you know that? Yeah. I last week it's our fourth show. No, it's our fifth show. Yeah, and we have a lot more planned in the near future. So if you're listening, like that, we've got scheduled entertainment lawyer Joey Novick is coming on to talk about things that comedians often neglect about the business end of show business. So that should be interesting. Then we've got writer Bill Ervolino, who's a humorist, worked for the New York Post at one point, gave me a bad review. We'll talk about that.
Oh, we're going to put him on the spot?
Yeah. We've got Carrie Snow coming in a couple of weeks. She was a writer on the original Roseanne Barr show.
Oh, my goodness.
And a comic, and I love her dearly. And she's got a personal story that'll knock your socks off. Jackie Martling's coming in. And that we've got some others, but we haven't confirmed them yet. So, but these should be fun shows. So, make it a point to find us and be like a heat-seeking missile and zero in on us and
be
do
centric.
Something. Be centric. There you go. Be centric.
See what I did there?
You did a good job. That's why you're in radio and I'm sitting in my house. Anyway, I love you, Kathy Caldwell.
Love you too, Julia Scotti.
And I'll see you next show.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Put the head on before you go. Put the head on. Let's say I'll talk while you put the head on. All right, we could do it like this. Okay. Bye. Thank you, Kathy Caldwell, for being you, and do the panda dance. And we'll see you next time. What a life.